We at Hierarchy Medicine understand that although people think of health as a simple problem and solution, it's actually quite complex and multidimensional. Elements of our lives like diet, environment, relationships, and even our emotions contribute to our overall health. Our goal is to present these complex relationships combined with human physiology in simple language so that you can immediately begin your personal journey toward optimal health. Welcome to the Hierarchy Medicine podcast. We don't know everything about everything. My name is Dr. Thomas Kim, and today my guest is the CEO of Hierarchy Medicine, Dr. Ethan Lee. Ethan, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I know you're really busy, and because of that, and I'm a huge fan of just like getting right into it, how about we just start?
Of course.
Okay. So you guys started with blood sugar. Tell us a little bit about why. Like, how did this whole journey start?
So I've always asked myself this question. How can I create a truly meaningful impact to human health at a larger scale? And I think in today, most healthcare professionals focuses on complexity. They're trying to decode a genetic sequence, trying to discover the newest mutant virus, new biohacking tools. Although all these works are valuable, I believe that we're missing forests for the trees. And human body has been the same for the past thousands of years. So to me, there is no ultimate code to crack. And even if there is one and we crack it, it will only benefit small percentage of people. So I reverse that question and I go simplified. And then when I try to trace back to all the modern health problems, again and again, I landed on blood sugar dysregulation. It underlies almost every chronic disease that we know. The thing is, scientifically, we already know everything about it. We know what causes it, we know how to stop it, we know how to change it. But we just lack a practical way to fix it at a larger scale. That's why I committed myself to this, me and my team trying to figure out if we can really help people restore the body's ability to regulate blood sugar, not just managing it, then we change everything.
Okay, yes. That's what I was about to bring up. A lot of people are talking about blood sugar, okay? It's kind of the common thing right now. But you guys took a completely different approach. So everyone else is talking about diabetes or they're talking about obesity, but you guys talk about motivation. So help us understand the connection of blood sugar and your motivation.
I think in today's world, a lot of the doctors, educators, and influencers are already talking about the negative effect of sugar on our body. But not too many people talk about how hard it is to quit sugar. And in today's society, if you fail to quit sugar, it's always seen as a personal failure, like you're undisciplined. You don't have the willpower to quit because other people can. But this is an outdated thinking. And I'm going to use depression as an example. We used to think that people that are depressed just don't have the ability to be positive. And we think the weather is nice, why are they such a downers? But then we realize it's actually the brain chemistry problem. Their brain chemistry is imbalanced, so they're unable to feel positive. They're depressed. Blood sugar is the same way. So when the brain biochemistry is compromised, the motivation and the ability for you to build new habit, it's harder. And I think that's why even in today's world, when we have the awareness that sugar is bad, public health is not improving. We're still seeing many people have health-related issues related to blood sugar, obesity, diabetes, even many mental health illnesses. That's why we're focusing on how do we change the biochemistry to enable you to have more motivation so you can start to establish healthy habits, including quitting sugar.
Okay. So can you help us, I mean, without doing a deep dive into the deep biochemistry, because I don't know how many people listening are going to be biochemistry majors, but like, can you help us understand what's like actually happening in the body or in your brain with what sugar is
when
doing?
You eat sugar?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think the first thing I want to clarify that my message is not about carbohydrates and sugar are all bad. I think it's important for people to know the consequences of this behavior. So we're only talking about when you have over amount of sugar over a long period of time, what is the impact on your body? So in that scenario, we're going to talk about how sugar changes your brain and your biochemistry in 3 ways. It changes how you feel, it changes how you think, and it changes how you act.
Okay.
So first, changes how you feel. So first, we need to understand the hormone insulin. So insulin is a hormone that reacts to sugar. Now, it lowers your sugar, it stores your sugar into fat cells. When you have over amount of sugar over a long period of time, your insulin's sensitivity becomes lower, meaning it's less efficient. So that means you need to have more sugar to get the same amount of satisfaction or energy compared to before. So it used to be 1 bag of chips. And then when you build it up, you start to become 2 bags, 3 bags. So that's the first thing. It changes how you feel.
So insulin is not working as well later on after eating a lot of sugar than it did before.
That's right. So that's the first thing.
So insulin's the problem.
Insulin is the problem. The regulation is the problem.
Okay.
And that's why when you start regulating, the common medical practice gives people insulin. You need to self-inject insulin because your body is unable to maintain a balance. So that's the first thing.
Okay.
Second thing is it changes how you think. So first, we need to understand the 2 parts of our brains. So the first part is the prefrontal cortex, located in the front. That is the area that's managing decision-making, emotion regulation, impulse control. And the other part of the brain called limbic brain or limbic cortex is responsible for reward circuit and emotions like anxiety and fear. So when you have too much sugar over a long period of time, you start to activate your limbic brain and you start to dampen the activity of your prefrontal cortex. So what is the combination then? You have less ability to control what you want to do, to make proper decision, and your brain is wired to sugar as an instant pleasure. So that's the second thing that sugar does to your brain.
So sugar, eating more sugar is making your brain want to eat more sugar, and then that makes it harder for you to be able to use the thinking part of your brain to say, even though I know this is not healthy for me, because I have this drive to eat more, I'm stuck in this loop.
Yes.
Okay.
Just think about after a long day of work, right? Most people go home, even though they know that exercise and meditating, it's a good habit to de-stress. Most people don't choose that.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Most people
You choose a drink.
Exactly. It's faster, right? So that's the effect, right? So the third thing is sugar changes how you act. It changes us symbiotically. So I use that word. We need to first understand gut microbiome. So gut microbiome refers to trillions of little microorganisms that's living in your gut.
Right, your probiotic and all of that stuff.
Yes, and what you eat feeds them. So if you consume too much sugar over time, you're going to feed the bacteria that like sugar naturally.
Sure.
So one of the fungi-like yeast is called Candida albicans. So this is the most common yeast that overgrows when you have too much sugar. So research have shown that these yeast, these Candida albicans, have the ability to send signal through your gut-brain axis to your brain and change your behavior. So you want more sugar.
Okay, hold on. So you're telling me these tiny little organisms in my gut, and I eat more sugar, and then I become like the zombie slave of these organisms, and I just walk around and be like, sugar, sugar. Like that's what's happening?
Yes, but you think you're feeding yourself, right? Because you establish this habit but you also cultivate a different gut biome situation, which you start to lose in between whether it's you want the sugar or is the gut want the sugar, and it becomes a negative feedback loop. You just keep feeding into this imbalanced microbiome.
That's still terrifying.
It is, but it's happening. It's very common in our current health situation.
Okay, so I understand now. Like, basically, if you have too much sugar, you have effectively set yourself up for failure, but set the zombie organism up for success. And then, so it's not so much you have a motivation problem, it's more that you are highly motivated to eat sugar rather than pursue what you know to be healthy.
Yes, you're locked into the old behavior.
Got it. Okay, I think I understand. Now, I've heard you use the phrase fuel to foe before in regards to sugar. Now, based on what you told me, I'm leaning on the foe part, right? So can you help us understand what you mean when you refer to sugar as fuel to foe?
So the phrase fuel to foe is used to describe our awareness or our relationship with sugar has changed over time. Because back in 1977, the official dietary guideline promoted a low-fat, high-carb diet.
Yeah.
And people think carbohydrate is this clean energy that is harmless to human body. And I don't know if you remember the food pyramid.
Oh yeah,
Do you
that was in my day.
What is a classic breakfast routine schedule for you?
So it was like cereal out of a box, toast. That was like what was recommended. It was the food pyramid. The bottom was the carbs, so you had to. It was good to have as many carbs as you wanted. Fats were bad, and so that was the birth of like non-butter stuff like margarine and all these synthetic things. Mm-hmm. So I mean, now we look at these things as trans fats and how dangerous it was. But back in those days, like that's what everybody ate.
And on top of that, don't mention about orange juice or apple juice,
sure,
which is just more carb on top, right?
Yep.
So now we look back, we will say, hey, that's like 90%, maybe 100% carbohydrate. That's not healthy. But back in 10 years ago, in 2015, U.S. dietary guideline officially acknowledged sugar or carbohydrate as a main factor that contribute to many of the chronic disease, like diabetes, obesity, and many mental health illnesses.
Right.
So our perspective have changed from fuel to foe throughout the time. But what's interesting or worrisome, I should say, is that even though this happened 10 years ago, now everyone knows that sugar is bad. Back in 1980s, in US population, people who have obesity was around 15%. And today, can we have a guess on what the number is?
I know it's bigger.
It's 40%. So it's almost 3 times. And mental health problems have been raised by 400% over this period of time. So obviously, awareness is not the problem. We know it's bad. It's the quitting part.
Right.
That's
so
hard.
Back to the motivation problem.
Exactly.
So even though the knowledge is out there, what's not happening is the education piece is not leading to an actual change in people's behavior.
Yes.
And because of your guys' research over at Hierarchy Medicine, you have learned that that's why it's not changing. They don't have an education. The public is not educated. It's they can't make that shift despite the fact that they have this knowledge.
Yes. And we struggle at the early stages when we're trying to do more education and trying to see what the problem is. And in the end, we landed on biochemistry. When we're able to change and affect the biochemistry, people have a higher success rate to change their habit.
Understood. I'm going to ask you 2 questions that I know everybody wants the answers to. I'll tell you what they are. Question number 1 is going to be, okay, how do I know where I'm at so I can get a sense of how well my body's handling sugar? And then, of course, number 2 is going to be, okay, what can I do about this, right? But before we get to the meaty part, let's answer like, what can we do to get some sense of like, how am I doing?
So first, we need to understand the current medical system. See blood sugar health as a binary thing. Either you have diabetes or you're healthy, right? But we need to learn to see health as a spectrum. So one end is disease, and the other end is optimal health and function. And somewhere we're assessing maybe health or not, disease or not disease is right here. Currently, if you have an okay number in A1C, blood glucose, and cholesterol, they think you're okay, right? Until they're not. But I think the most accurate and more direct indicator on lab tests for your blood sugar health is actually fasting insulin.
Right. And so again, we're back to insulin, but that's not a test that's standard in your annual exam, right? Most people don't order this test.
Most of the time, it's not including your annuals. 90% of the doctors don't order this test. And the reason why it's important is because when you're fasting and your insulin is high, and this number in the clinical setting, we like our patient to be optimal health at below 10 milligrams. So if it's higher than 10, it's at 20, 25, we know that your insulin is, your pancreas is at stress, even when you're not eating. So that is the most direct, in my opinion, way to measure where you are on blood sugar health.
Going back to what you said before, so it's the elevation or the bigger number of insulin is actually telling us that the insulin is inefficient, like we talked about earlier. And that's why you have to have so much more insulin in order for you to get the same results as before, right? So that's a direct test to help measure, hey, now you're starting to not be as efficient or sensitive, and so we have to make more insulin.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay, got it.
So that's an objective way you can measure where you are. Subjectively, currently there's no way we can measure. That's why at Hierarchy Medicine, we built this functional questionnaire that evaluates a different aspect of your life. We measure sleep, energy, mood, and food cravings, and motivations. So we can kind of get a sense on where you are on blood sugar health.
Okay, so just so for people who are listening who don't know what we mean when we say subjective, subjective is your self-reporting of how you feel. So like if we would ask you a question, something along the lines of, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? So there's no quote unquote right or wrong answer, but it's your answer in that moment in time.
Yes.
And so you guys have built a questionnaire where they can answer these questions and then use that as sort of like a tracking model to over time to see like, oh, how much improvement am I getting?
Yes.
Okay. And then we will include that link into the end of the podcast so that they can just go into the site and answer the questions. Yes. Okay.
But one thing I want to add is that subjective report is commonly omitted in the current medical setting because they think what patients think doesn't matter. We don't care how you think about your sleep. We only look at the lab numbers. But I think it should be the other way around. If I'm the patient, I would like to know how I feel.
Right.
And how it changes throughout time after the intervention. So that's why we built the subjective questionnaire to help people understand that.
And there's tons of examples of people who subjectively feel terrible and then they get tests and they're all normal. And then they're like, this doesn't reflect how I feel, right? So, and then they get this, nothing's wrong with you.
Yes.
Okay, understood. Now the big question that everybody wants the answer to is, okay, say I do this subjective testing, say I go out and I get my fasting insulin and they're all bad. Okay, now what can I do?
So on this podcast, I'm going to share 2 solutions. But before I dive into that, I want to remind the audience that if you're talking about solutions to learn about your blood sugar health or diet, lifestyle habit, there's a lot of materials out there already. But here we're strictly talking about the solutions to change the biochemistry to support the blood sugar health. So the first thing I want to talk about is a simple framework called the 3 R's. It's a rewire, reinforce, and replenish. So let's start with the first one. Rewire the reward loop. Okay, so first we need to understand the difference between 2 types of food, and based on me. One type is the brain food. Okay, that's more high content in fat and protein. The other is what I call a soul food for your soul. That's more sweet and carbohydrate. So when your brain has a craving coming up, you want to eat something, mix it up with the categories or substitute, it would be better. Instead of a bag of chips, a can of pop soda, or a piece of candies, you can have a bag of meat jerkies, or you can have boiled egg, olive, coconut chip, something to mix it up. So you start to train your brain whenever you want something, it doesn't always just get sugar. It's also getting fat, it's also getting protein. So that's the first thing you can do to start to change that biochemistry loop.
Okay, so you're manipulating is a strong word, but essentially you're manipulating the reward cycle so that you're not just reinforcing the sugar reinforcement or reward loop. You're saying, hey, we can still feel satisfied with the other healthier categories of food.
Yes,
okay,
that's
got
essentially the first R, the rewire, the reward loop.
Okay.
And the second one will be reinforce. Reinforce a routine schedule. And when we said that, we mean eating and sleeping schedule. The reason why is that eating and sleeping schedule, if they're consistent, it will anchor the two hormones that's related to it, the insulin and cortisol, the stress hormone. And these two hormones essentially interact with your brain and affect every other hormones. So if you can have a consistent eating and sleeping schedule, you start to anchor your biochemistry.
I see. And then, it's funny because we understand this as parents, we understand this for children. Like children really do thrive and do much, much better when they have a consistent schedule. Like they wake up at a certain time, they go to bed at a certain time, you have like scheduled meals. They do so much better. And then for whatever reason, I think we feel like the rules don't apply to us anymore when we become adults and we're like, oh, we can do whatever we want. But that's just not true, right? Yes. We all actually do much better when we have a consistent schedule.
That's right.
Okay.
So the last one, replenish. We want to replenish the nutrition that we use after processing too much sugar. So I'm going to talk about two categories. The first categories will be minerals. And these minerals will get depleted more if you have more sugar. First one is zinc, because zinc is used to make insulin. Okay, so food that are rich in zinc, on the top of my head, oyster, red meat, pumpkin seed, or others you can look it up online. The second thing is magnesium, because magnesium helps the insulin efficiency to go up. And rich in magnesium, almond, cacao, or dark leafy green vegetables. Okay,
so we can have chocolate, and that's going to help.
If it's dark chocolate,
dark chocolate,
not milk chocolate, right? Dark cacao, actually, cacao powder, there will be a better option. And lastly is chromium, because chromium, not a common thing people talk about, but it increases your body's ability to regulate sugar. So it's an essential mineral for that. And food that are rich in chromium will be cruciferous vegetables. And
what are the cruciferous vegetables?
Like bok choy, cabbage, kale.
Okay. Yeah, the cabbage family,
exactly.
Broccoli, cauliflower, that kind of thing. Okay,
exactly.
Understood.
So the three minerals will be zinc, magnesium, and chromium. And the one organ we need to support is liver, because liver is the main organ that processes sugar. Food that support liver will be actual liver, beef, chicken liver. Which is something that's not common in Western diet.
No, we don't eat that anymore. I mean, that's even before my time, but back, I think in the 50s, we used to have like liver Tuesdays or liver Wednesdays. And in America, people ate liver and onions on a weekly basis.
So it used to be a thing.
It used to be a thing, but that just kind of fell out of favor,
So
probably along the same time as like,
the food pyramid. Double damage. So other than liver, another thing you can support the liver is bitters. Bitter melon, which again is not a common thing in Western diet. Also cruciferous vegetables, especially kale. It's a bitter. Another thing will be artichoke. So these are the things you can add into your diet to start to support the biochemistry so your body can process sugar better. And that's the replenish. So with the rewire, reinforce, and replenish, you start to set your body up for more stable biochemistry. So you can start to make changes easily. It start to work for you instead of working against you.
Got it. So I'm just going to quick summarize, the 3 R's, and we'll provide information on the link so that people can get access to them. But essentially what we're doing is we're trying to use food and lifestyle to be able to kind of normalize how your brain and your body works in response to sugar so that it can work the way it's supposed to work, and then you get control of your motivation and your willpower back.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And then this is also going to affect the creepy little guys that are making me zombie crave sugar all day long?
Yes, especially the rewired one.
Okay.
You start feeding your body sugar, you starve more of them.
Yeah, because I'm sure everybody listening that's what they're thinking right now. Is like, how do I solve for that problem?
Yes.
Got it. You said 2 solutions. So what's the second one?
So the second solution will be a program my team and I have built called Online Road to Health Program. And this Online Road to Health Program is designed to first establish a strong physiological foundation and guide people towards optimal health. And the first step of this Online Road to Health program, we call it Stabilize. The goal for Stabilize is to stabilize the biochemistry to help the body support blood sugar regulation. And through that, we can restore motivation from inside out. I don't want to sound too salesy, but as a clinician, I've seen this program work many, many times. Me and my team spent a lot of time and effort doing the research, trying out the clinical trials, and we found a way to fit this program easily into a modern lifestyle. It doesn't have a strict diet to follow or require you to start exercising today. It has a whole food nutrition support to help you balance your biochemistry. Second, it has in-depth knowledge education to help you understand what is going on, understand how your body works. And lastly, it has an organized mini step of action items weekly to help you build a long-term success. So whether you are someone who are just starting to get into this journey of building health, or if you are someone who've already built health but want to strengthen it, I truly believe that this is the right program for you to try.
Awesome. So just kind of so everybody understands, the first solution, the 3 R's, we have a PDF that you guys have provided that people can download. And then we'll also support a link that they can go follow to start this Online Road to Health program.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us. We really appreciate it. We like to say here, the journey to optimal health starts with understanding. So I think you've helped us quite a bit have some deeper understanding of this connection between blood sugar and motivation and how we can help people change things and not just get the education, but actually be able to change their life.
Thank you, Thomas.